So we stopped at 26, which these were ones that were equal to. So we're making our sign chart. Anything that was undefined or zeros, obviously we weren't including. But where we are at now, these are inequalities. So we're determining basically what values make this true or not true. And that's how we're finding our solution. So 36 x squared minus 4 over x squared plus 4 is greater than 0. So how do I find my zeros and where it's undefined? Yep, zeros are the top.
Did Julie Wright find you? She was hunting you. She was over here last class period.
No, but she texted me and then she didn't respond when I responded to her.
Oh, well, I just told her. She said, well, if you see her, tell her. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, set the top equal to 0 to find the zeros. So x squared minus 4 equals 0. So x squared equals 4. So what are my zeros? Yep. So x equals 2, x equals negative 2. What about undefined? How do I find that? Yep, denominator equal to 0, so x squared plus 4 equals 0. X squared equals negative 4. So where is it undefined? Is there anywhere that it's undefined?
That's too high.
Is that a real number? So is there anywhere that it's undefined? So there are none. So we do our sign chart. Put on negative 2 and positive 2. Now, before I actually do this, what values am I looking for?
Greater than 0.
So what type of numbers are those? So I only want positive, not 0. So when I write my answer, I'm looking for the areas that it is positive. So if I plug in a number from over here, what is it on top? So if I plug in negative 3, it's positive over, plug in negative 3, positive. So that whole region is positive. If I put in 0, what do I have top and bottom? Negative on top, positive on the bottom, so that whole region is negative. How about if I choose positive 3? Positive on top, positive on bottom, so the whole thing is positive. So my intervals, I need positive, not 0, so I'm using parentheses, is from negative infinity to negative 2, union 2 to infinity. That would be your solution there for that one.
Why do you use parentheses?
Because I can't include the zeros because it's just greater than. Apparently it wants to spaz. There we go. Let's see, 38. X squared plus 3x minus 10 over x squared minus 6x plus 9 is less than 0. So when you have one like this, and I could have done it with the numerator on the last one, but it wasn't going to help in the end, so that's why I didn't do it. But I need to factor. So what would the top of this factor into?
X minus 3, x plus 5. Or x squared. X plus 5. X plus 2.
X plus 5, x minus 2. Over. What's the bottom factor into? Oh, x minus 3 squared. And that's all less than 0. So what values am I going to be looking for in my sign chart? Negative. And again, not 0. So I need to find my zeros. Obviously in this form it makes it a lot easier. So my zeros, and you don't even have to like show the work out, but where are my zeros going to be?
X equals negative 5. X equals 2.
Yep, x equals negative 5 and x equals 2. What about undefined? Yep, x equals 3. Because that's going to give me a 0 on the bottom. So remember, undefined, we can never include those because obviously that's going to cause a problem. So no matter what problems, if we're doing equalities or inequalities, undefined values, we don't include them in our final solution if they're part of, like, would be quote-unquote in it. We just have to put parentheses around them. So, sign chart. I've got negative 5, 2, and 3. And a lot of times, like at my undefined values, I'll put a little mark just so that I remember which one's undefined when it comes to the end. So when I'm plugging in numbers, I would ignore completely what we started with and only use the factored form because it will make it a lot easier. So what number should we plug in first for this interval here?
Negative 6.
Negative 6. What happens when I plug in negative 6? Negative. And this one? Negative. What about the bottom? Positive. What's going to be true of the bottom every time? Why? Yep, so I can go ahead and do positive all the way across the bottom because I know that's not going to change. So what is this whole region here? Positive. All right, what number are we choosing here? 0. What happens when I plug in 0 on top? Positive. And the next one? Negative. So this whole region is negative. All right, this one here between 2 and 3, obviously a little bit more difficult, but you're still choosing, I would say 2.5 would be the easiest thing. So when you plug that in, what do we get here? Positive. What about the second one? Yep, also positive. So that whole region is positive. And then over here, if you choose 4, yep, positive and positive. Now, I only need negative values and not zeros, so that means I am from negative 5 to 2, and it's parentheses. So that's the region that would give me values that make that statement true. Let's see, one more. 46. X minus 5 raised to the 4th over x times x plus 3. And that's greater than or equal to 0. So what values am I going to be looking for this time? positive, and 0. So, what are my zeros? Yep, x equals 5. What about undefined? And so if I set the denominator equal to 0, I would have x plus 3 equals 0, and I would have x equals 0. So I also have to have x equals 0 as one of them. Because if it makes either part of the denominator 0, then that's going to cause a problem and make it undefined because it's being multiplied. So now set up the sign chart. Now what do we know about the top?
It's positive.
It's always going to be positive. So regardless of what the bottom is, I know that that part's going to be positive. So I'm going to go ahead and put that across. And I'm going to mark my 2 undefineds here so that I don't end up including them if that is a region that would work. So what number should I plug in over here? -4. So that makes negative times what? Negative times a negative. So this whole area is positive. What are we plugging in here? -1. So that's negative and positive. So this whole region is negative. What about over here? What's that going to make it? Yep, positive and positive, so the whole thing is positive. And last one. Yep, positive and positive, so that whole region is positive. Now, I can include the zeros, okay? So, I have -3 is undefined, so I'm going to have negative infinity to -3. Then union.
Would it be parentheses, not brackets, because it's. Why wouldn't it be brackets?
Because it's undefined.
Okay.
So then 0 is still one that's undefined, so it's going to be a parentheses. So 0, 2. Now, this is or equal to, which means I include the 0. So I don't have to have a break. I can go 0 all the way to infinity. If instead this was just greater than, I would have to say 0 to 5 with parentheses and then 5 to infinity. Okay, but this is or equal to, so I can include this in the region. Okay. Any questions about that? This is the first one that's or equal to, I think, that we've had, so just checking. Or any questions about any of the other stuff in this section? All right, so I think I had given y'all a few problems the other day. So in addition to that, I'm adding on 33, 37, 39 and 45. And your quiz is going to be on Wednesday since we're just finishing this section up today. And we're ahead of where we have to be, so
Can I leave my book in my locker, please?
yes, and start bringing it to class because I'm not going to keep letting you go get it. That should come with you to class every single day.